Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you could find. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 111 of Talking Blue. As you already know, we are here to recap the Dodgers, the Yankees. The first series of the second half is underway. Dodgers took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, so they get off to a pretty good start in the second half. We obviously know there was a rainout. Dodgers had to play a doubleheader on Sunday, which just wrapped up. A lot of things going on. A couple of slight injury news to get to. Obviously, the games, overall, pretty good series, like I said. Get off to a pretty good start, and they'll head to Philadelphia to take on the Phillies tomorrow. But before we get to any of that stuff, as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod, and you can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. All right, so let's waste no time. Like I said, it was a pretty fun series. We'll start with some injury stuff. Right at the top, just like last week's news, Shohei Ohtani. All right, so of course a week ago, last time I talked to you guys, he was scratched from his Friday start against the Diamondbacks. He was going to take off the weekend and the whole beginning of the week with the All-Star stuff. Didn't play in the All-Star game, didn't travel. We know he didn't make his last start. Originally, Dave Roberts came out when they kind of said that they were going to reshuffle the starting rotation, who was going to pitch on what days. They were going to push him all the way back to Wednesday, which is a lot of the kind of a reoccurring day he's pitched on a lot, so he could get the rest day on Thursday, which is usually the most often off day. Pushed him back to Wednesday to make that start against the Phillies. They have already come out and said he will not pitch, all right, and it is kind of TBD, to be determined, when he will make his next start. They want to give him more time to rest that knee, which has so far given him no problems when he's hitting. Although it does seem like if you watch him on the field, it does affect him a little bit. There was a couple plays in the series. You could see him kind of gingerly walking off the field. There was a tiny bit of a scary play in this Sunday night game, trying to beat out a infield hit and kind of stepped on the bag on that left leg, and nothing really came of it, but you could just tell he looks a little bit uncomfortable. Don't love that. Obviously, you hate when a player is like nursing and battling through an injury all year. So far, it hasn't really seemed to affect him on the offensive side. He has cooled off from where he was a few weeks ago when he was raking, but overall, he had two hits on the game one of the doubleheader on Sunday, and it just has pretty much affected him. They say when he's pitching. All right, it's basically like the left kneecap is what they've basically said. The quote from Dave Roberts that is the most unfortunate is, it's going to be some time, and I'd say that it's not going to be a day-to-day thing. So at first it kind of sounded like, all right, they want to give him a little bit more rest, maybe another week or so. That quote does kind of mention that, I think we're definitely going to see him pitch again, and I think that, I've said this before, if this was a postseason game, if it was the postseason, I think he could pitch and it would be fine. But I just think that given their lead in the division, we're now in the second half. Shohei's not really in any kind of Cy Young race. Everybody's kind of come together and said, let's, put a pause on this. There's no reason to have you pitch over 150 innings. Let's nurse this and get you ready for October, obviously. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. I don't love those quotes because it does kind of show that it hasn't really gotten much better, even though he got some injections a week ago and had it like drained and all that kind of stuff. But we'll see. Obviously, the fact that he's still hitting and running and all that stuff shows that it's not like the worst injury ever that you would imagine. So let's get to the next two guys that aren't really great updates, and then we'll finish with some positive updates. Will Smith shut down for baseball activities once again. Neck still isn't recovering. He had began to start seeing some positive things, and then again, I guess the neck just continues to flare up with him. Again, him and Tyler Glasnow are now in this boat of, really don't know at this point. Again, I think we will see Will Smith back at some point, and, I think he'll be ready to go come postseason time, but he is definitely now in a position where it's like, have no idea. He could come back in 2 weeks. he could not come back till the middle of September, 2 months from now. So we really don't know what's going on with him. I made this comp last week. It is starting to sound a lot like what happened with Max Muncy 2 years ago. He dealt with an oblique injury, did everything he could to come back, just kept having setbacks, and then finally I think he just went to see like a massage therapist and fixed things, and he just felt good and came back. And it seems like Will Smith, especially considering that it's a neck, which is always kind of a weird injury, that you can't really figure out if the thing is fully healed until you do some baseball activities. And so we're going to just have to see. It's going to be a waiting game and see if, when Will Smith just feels good and feels like he can get out there. Tyler Glasnow, still throwing only fastball bullpens, similar to Will. I think he will return, but at this point, no clue. Again, just two of the injuries this year for the Dodgers that have started out not seeming like an issue and just continue to snowball until the time that we are in now, mid-July, fastly approaching late July, and there is literally no timeline, no anything for those two guys' returns. But the last three guys, positive updates. Kike Hernandez, he already began his rehab assignment in OKC. That was on Friday, still on track to be activated when the Dodgers go home next, which will be for a few series. But he will be activated shortly. Edwin Diaz completed his third rehab assignment Friday. Kind of seems like he just needs to check the box of pitching back-to-back days. Actually is pretty close to returning. I guess it makes more sense for a reliever. By the time that you get into your first rehab game, you do have to be built up enough to actually pitch a full inning. It's not like a MLB starter who goes down there and, like Blake Snell we'll get to in a minute, pitch 1 inning, pitch 2 innings, 4 innings, slowly build up. When you're a reliever, you got to be built up enough to throw 20 pitches in an inning. And obviously a reliever's job is to just throw 1 inning. So it obviously is much quicker revamp to get ready. So I would imagine after he pitches a couple back-to-backs, maybe comes into an inning in the middle of a game, he'll be pretty close to being activated. He will probably be activated before the month of August, which I would have suspected in the month of August. And then the last guy before we get to these games, Blake Snell finally made his first rehab assignment. Not his first rehab assignment of the year, but his first rehab assignment since the bone spur surgery. 1.1 innings pitched, 32 pitches, topped out at 96.3. All great signs. Looked pretty good. Probably looking at mid-August at this point as he basically begins a spring training build-up. All right. Basically, it will take you a month to slowly build up. Maybe, again, if he can take a pretty big jump in the next couple starts, maybe it'll be more early August. But if I would have to imagine sometime August 15th is where you can look to see Snell activated to join the rotation. Let's get into the first game. Friday night, Roki Sasaki gets the ball. Dodgers reshuffled their rotation, like I said. Sasaki will take on Garrett Cole. Pretty good pitching matchup between a veteran and a youngster. All right, let's go ahead and get to the fourth inning when the Yankees got on the board thanks to a pass ball from Dalton Rushing. This was with 2 outs, splitter that Rushing just tried to frame, nicked off his glove to the backstop, and Jason Dominguez comes in to score 1-0 Yankees. We go all the way to the top of the 7th inning. Garrett Cole and Roki Sasaki had both been pitching good. Garrett Cole's into the 7th inning scoreless. He gets through 6 innings of scoreless ball with 1 out. In the 7th inning, runner on base, Max Muncy, one of the biggest swings of this series, especially for the Dodgers, of course. He hits his 18th home run of the year to right field in the upper deck. Electric home run, electric bat drop, classic Max Muncy. Flips the score, makes it 2-1. That would be all the scoring the Dodgers would need. They would hold on to win by a score of 2-1. Jack Dreyer gets the win, but Roki Sasaki pitched pretty good in this game, and we'll get to him. He goes 5.2, Jack Dreyer for 1, Alex Vessier for 1, Tanner Scott for 1 in the 9th. He gets his 14th save of the year. Garrett Cole gets handed the loss, even though he did pitch pretty good, 6 innings pitched, only allowed 2 earned runs on that home run. He did strike out 8. He pitched pretty good against the Dodgers. All right, and very reminiscent of how he pitched against them in the World Series 2 years ago, actually. So let's get to Roki Sasaki. All right, I wanted to talk about him. He actually was very exciting in this game. 5.2 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 run, was not earned because of that pass ball. So 5.2, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, no home runs allowed. He lowers his ERA. Sub 5, 4.98 ERA. Very, very good start for Sasaki and a very good way to start off his second half. All right. The story of the game for Sasaki, without question, was his very noticeable, massive increase in velocity. Okay, so Sasaki on the year averaged 97.6 prior to the start. In this game, he was averaging 100.1. That's right. Let me say that again. 97.6, so basically 97.5. In this start alone, he averaged 100.1. All right, his velocity jumped up 2.5 miles an hour in this game. That's pretty crazy. His 21 pitches at 100 miles per hour plus are the most by any Dodger in a game in the StatCast era. That dates back to 2015. Also, since they began tracking that stuff, back to 2008. That is also that's the most for any Dodger. That actually broke Bobby Miller, who did that a few years ago for the Dodgers. All right, so that was the most noticeable thing. Topped out at 101.8. All right, so with that getting rounded up, there was a couple times in this game in the first inning that he hit 102. All right, so the velocity was just explosive. All right, he looked really, really good. And the Yankees they're ranked 23rd in average versus four-seam fastballs and 24th versus splitters. So Sasaki took that to his advantage. He generated 10 whiffs between those two pitches. In the game overall, he had 16 whiffs. All right, so 5 on the four-seamer, 5 on the splitter, and then he had 6 on his slider. The slider actually looked really, really good. And like I said, 2.4 mile per hour increase in velocity for Roki Sasaki in this game. That was the story without a doubt. And, you guys know that I chronicalized basically 2 months ago, or I should say 2 months ago when Sasaki started to pitch a lot better, probably about a month and a half when I started to chronicleize all this stuff. A lot of the reason Sasaki turned his season around at one point and started to pitch really, really good was because of his increase in velocity and really all the metrics behind that. The IVB, the vertical movement, really just the pitch is spinning overall. The characteristics behind the pitch looked much better and made it less of a kind of problem for Sasaki, because that's always been one of his issues, is the fastball getting hit around, even though he throws pretty hard. All right, so, he made some changes. It's kind of interesting because Sasaki's always been a guy who has mentioned that he's always slightly tweaking things. And if you look at his entire career, there's been so many games in his young career so far where there was a noticeable difference in his velocity, and he credited in the post-game interview that he made a couple tweaks to his mechanics. Most famously, a year ago when Sasaki was in the minor leagues in September, moved to the bullpen, just doing anything to get back to the big leagues after he had been injured for like 3 months. He was down in the minor leagues, throwing 94 miles an hour, made a couple tweaks to his mechanics, and all of a sudden was throwing 100 miles an hour, literally. And this year, he has slowly increased the velo as the season has gone on. And then obviously in this start, the velocity jumped up a ton. That's pretty crazy, the fact that he was averaging 100 miles an hour. Jacob Misiorowski is the only starting pitcher in baseball to average 100 miles an hour. All right, so Sasaki was in unprecedented territory for sure, even in today's modern-day baseball of guys throwing so hard. What's interesting to me, what will be interesting to track going forward is what is this, how does the velocity look his next start? If you were to ask me, I think a lot of that is, a reason as to why the velo jumped was adrenaline. Okay. He's in New York. He obviously had some rest over the break and, since the last time he pitched, and you're in New York, obviously excitement, the adrenaline is there, it's a big game, and, it's not a shock to me that the velocity was up that much. I'm sure that part of the reason it jumped up that much, like literally almost 3 miles an hour, was also because of the mechanical tweak, and then on top of that, adrenaline. So, if you would have said to me before the game he was going to throw his hardest pitch of the season, I would have said that's probably because of adrenaline. And it was in the first inning, 102 miles an hour. But the fact that he maintained basically that the entire game, not 102, but, like if he would have just topped out at 102 in the first inning, but then for the entire start, he averaged more like 98 miles an hour, then I would have said, well, that was the adrenaline. The fact that he did maintain 100 miles an hour does show that he did make some tweaks. So we'll have to see the next start. His next start should be, because the Dodgers want to maintain a six-man rotation, I would believe it'll be next Friday in New York once again against the Mets. So we'll have to see how that, looks in terms of the velocity maintaining. So all very, very interesting. That goes back to Sasaki at his heyday, at his best, when he was in the MVP, pitching in Japan, literally sitting 100 miles an hour, wicked split. The split was averaging almost 93 in this game. All the velo was up across the board in terms of all of his pitches, and generated in some good swing and miss. Didn't necessarily have a ton of strikeouts, only 5, but 16 whiffs is very, very good. The velocity looked great. I put out some videos on my X if you guys want to go take a look at that. The velocity was definitely explosive and very, very noticeable right away. So we'll see if Sasaki can continue that. And overall, just a great start. Obviously, the last basically month or so, we talked about how much he kind of struggled, not so much with the command, but just going back to getting hit, giving up a lot of home runs, and, just things kind of spiraled out of control when he pitched really good in the end of May and early June. So it's really great to see him get off to this good start. Couple mechanical tweaks. The fastball was explosive, but also in and around the strike zone, and that led to some really ugly swings against the splitter, which looked great, and then the slider looked really good. Even threw that to some lefties and righties. So overall, a great start. Hopefully, can catapult him to some great things into the second half. And the velocity, again, we'll see. Sasaki could pitch great for this entire second half and still not get a single postseason start. Maybe not even be on the roster. Who knows? But something like this, the velocity, makes you excited that he could, again, go back to the bullpen just because, the Dodgers won't really have any room for him in the rotation. Not because I think he can't be a starter again. I'm not on that, that bandwagon of Sasaki needs to be a reliever because of that hot flash that he showed last postseason, but just because there's only so many starts in the postseason, and a guy is so talented, you could put him in the bullpen, and obviously, we saw that velocity. Who knows? He could even tick up a little bit more, with some adrenaline and a short spurt. So all interesting stuff. We'll have to see what he does the next time out. I wanted to talk about the Dodgers' defense in this game. All right, obviously in my quick little wrap-up talking about the scoring, I didn't mention the crazy defensive play in the 8th inning. All right, so we know the Dodgers were horrific on defense to close up that first half. All right, against the Rockies and Diamondbacks, they made 9 errors in that week, and they had by far and still have the least amount of errors in baseball and have been one of, if not arguably the best defensive team in baseball. Looked much better this week. Didn't get off to a great start because part of the reason the Yankees got on the board was what was supposed to be a double from Jason Dominguez. When Andy Paz picked up the ball to throw it into the infield, he actually dropped the ball, which allowed Dominguez to get an extra base, which eventually led to that run. That was an error on Paz. So the defense was not off to a great start. But then after that, a couple of nice plays, specifically this relay to cut down what would have been the tying run in the 8th inning. Alex Vesia is on the mound, Ben Rice at the plate, tying run on first base. Vesia hangs a slider, Ben Rice crushes it into right center. I thought it was gone. I mean, in my mind, Vesia on the mound, Ben Rice at the plate. With Judge out, this is their best hitter. He proceeds to leave a slider right down the heart of the plate on the first plate. First pitch, Rice crushed it. I thought it was gone. Paz immediately, reacts when the ball hit off the wall hard, carried right to him, threw the ball in quickly. Obviously, it tailed away from Mookie Betts. He made a nice play to go track it down. He threw the ball on the run, also kind of threw the ball not on line, just like Paz, but rushing, nice play, catches the ball, reaches back, sweep tag to get the out. That definitely won and saved the game for the Dodgers. Great defensive play. The Dodgers have been really good at cutting runners down at the plate this year on outfield relays, and there's a lot of numbers that can actually back this up. So as a team, they are 3rd in fielder runs, 2nd in runners thrown out, 1st in runners not successfully advancing. So runners successfully going to the next base. They are 1st in not successfully advancing for the opposing runner. 3rd in R arm. weird analytical stat, R, the letter R, and then arm. Outfield runs saved above average. They're third in that, and then they are third in defensive runs saved, total defensive stat. So I think overall the Dodgers have had an amazing defense this year, and I think that they just had a little bit of a defensive lapse last week. They actually looked much better this week. A couple of nice defensive plays. Max Muncy, Tommy Edman. We already talked about Paz. He even made a nice diving catch in the gap in this game. Overall, the defense looked much better. And this, that play in the eighth inning, pretty amazing relay. I mean, it just shows like Paz, I think, also thought that ball was crushed and was gone. You could see him kind of just fading towards the outfield wall, and then the ball hit off the wall and caromed right to him. So he kind of reacted like, oh, perfectly. Ball hit right to me, turn around and spun quickly. Because he spun and threw the ball so quickly, didn't really, set his feet and make a good throw. Mookie had to go and get it, field the ball, catch it on the run, throw it on the run, and then obviously throw a pretty good throw to Rushing. I mean, it was offline, but, he was on the run. Pretty amazing play overall. So that definitely saved the game for the Dodgers. And then the rest of the game, the at-bats weren't too great. A couple of two-out hits that couldn't cash in early in the game when Garrett Cole got two quick outs. Dodgers were able to get some base runners, but weren't able to cash in. The Max Muncy home run, though, that was pretty epic, especially after the Aaron Boone mound visit, left Cole in the game. Right after that, Muncy hits a home run, epic bat drop, second deck, flipped the score just like that late in the game. Bullpen also did their job. I know Vesia gave up that, what should have been run with that ball hit off the wall, but Tanner Scott got the save overall. Very exciting, nice first win. Offense, again, wasn't too great, and they were kind of inconsistent in the series, and we'll get to that, but overall, a nice first win. Let's go ahead, and let's get to Game 2 of this series. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the mound, taking on Cam Schlittler. What a pitching matchup. This was obviously supposed to be the Sunday night baseball matchup, but obviously we got the rain out. Saturday night makes it a doubleheader, and then both managers kind of shuffle their pitching. They keep the guys that were scheduled for Sunday as to pitch on that day. They just move them to the earlier game, and then both teams kind of go with a bullpen game for Game 2. And then Emmett Sheehan, who was supposed to pitch on Saturday, he will pitch Monday against the Phillies. So they had to do some shuffling. Dodgers rarely have to deal with stuff like that, considering that it basically never rains in Los Angeles, so it's very rare. Dodgers really have to deal with rain delays or games canceled. That's the first time I actually can remember a Dodger game being canceled in a long time. So first time they've had to deal with that kind of thing in a long time. But let's go to Game 2, which was earlier today, Sunday afternoon. Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Cam Schlittler, two of the best pitchers in the game. Really highly anticipated matchup. Dodgers get on the board first, though, against Schlittler. Shohei Ohtani, an RBI double into right field. Tommy Edman comes in to score to make it 1-0. Later in that inning with two outs, Freddie Freeman an RBI single into center field, also off of Schlittler, makes it 2-0. In the fourth inning, the Yankees would get a run against Yamamoto thanks to a solo home run from Trent Grisham. Makes it a 2-1 game. Right after that, though, this is also still against Schlittler. Andy Pages a little bloop double into right field to make it 3-1. And then eventually Schlittler comes out of the game. He only goes 4.1. In the eighth inning, though, this is when the Dodgers would tally on against the Yankees bullpen. An RBI ground rule double into right field from Teoscar Hernandez would make it 4-1. Later on, Tommy Edman, an RBI single with the bases loaded into right field. That was actually a two-run single to make it 6-1. Shohei Ohtani, right after that, his second hit of the game, an RBI single, makes it 7-1. Freddie Freeman, an RBI sac fly, makes it 8-1. The Yankees would get on the board thanks to a RBI single from Anthony Volpe. That was actually thanks to a fly ball that should have been caught by Andy Pages, but it was lost in the sun. So that run is credited to Yamamoto. But the Dodgers hang on to win by a score of 8-2. Yamamoto goes a full 9 innings, no bullpen, complete game for Yamamoto. The first in his big league career in the regular season, because of course, famously, he pitched 2 complete games in the postseason. First time he's done that in the regular season. So the Dodgers get to Schlittler. We'll get to that. He goes 4.1, allows 3 earned runs, 6 hits. We'll get to him in that offensive approach in a sec. But Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he gets his 10th win of the season. 9 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, 2 earned runs. Really should have just been 1 earned run. Two earned runs, 0 walks, 7 strikeouts. He lowers his ERA to 2.78. Phenomenal start from Yamamoto. First complete game of his career in the regular season, like I said. In complete control for the entirety of the game. And if you watch this game, 2 completely different tail ends of pitching, honestly. You got Schlittler, who was pitching for the strikeout, blowing away the Dodgers, just throwing that fastball at the top of the zone, getting a ton of swing and miss. He was actually overpowering the Dodgers at some points. But a lot of long innings, long at-bats led to him getting his pitch count up there early on, where he threw over 90 pitches and didn't even get through 5 innings. Yamamoto barely had to throw 100 pitches to throw a complete game. Didn't have a ton of whiffs in this game, but he had a lot of very easy innings, some ground ball outs, double plays, a lot of soft contact with some strikeouts mixed in there. It was just a cruise control of a performance for Yamamoto. Like I said, he only had 6 whiffs in the entire game, and 4 of them came on a splitter. So he threw the full arsenal kitchen sink. He threw 33 splitters, 23 cutters, 23 four-seam fastballs, 13 sinkers, 7 curves, and then 3 sliders. Threw the whole kitchen sink and only managed to get 6 whiffs. All right, he got 1 on the cutter, none on his four-seam fastball. We talked about it before, the increase in swing and miss on his four-seamer this year. He had 1 on the sinker, none on the curveball and the slider. He just had 4 on the splitter. But a lot of soft contact, and we've seen this with Yamamoto this year, where he will have some swing and miss in some high strikeout games, but really it's been a lot more soft contact, pounding the strike zone at a way better clip, or at least just not walking hitters as much as he did last year. But he still did have 7 strikeouts, which of course is pretty good, and no walks. A great bounce back start after his rough start against the D-backs to finish off the first half. 2.78 ERA, that is 13th best in baseball. And this version of Yamamoto this year might not be as dominant, as he was last year, because he did get more strikeouts and whiffs last year. But you could argue maybe it's a little bit more of a complete pitcher, because he still gets the ground balls, which lead to double plays, and the command and the less walks is what's really been key. Because Yamamoto actually last year was like league average with the walk rate. This year he's got one of the best walk rates in the game. Completely has cut that in half. Like much, much better with him not allowing walks. And so even though he's had a little bit less swing and miss and strikeouts, a perfect way to kind of balance that out is that he has way less walks. So maybe you could argue it's even a bit of a more complete version of Yamamoto, especially with his deep arsenal, a little bit more sinkers this year, sliders, stuff like that, much deeper arsenal. So great stuff from Yamamoto. And obviously massive, can't say that enough, because it's a doubleheader. You got to have a bullpen game in game 2. You go the full distance like that. Bullpen is completely fresh to unleash a bunch of pitchers in game 3 of that series, game 2 of the doubleheader, and obviously a long week against some pretty good teams coming up. So can't state how amazing that is. First complete game of his career. And then quickly, before we get to the game 3 and all that stuff, the offense actually put up a pretty decent fight against Schlittler. I've told you guys before, when you go up against elite pitchers are elite pitchers for a reason. There's a reason why Cam Schlittler had an ERA in the low 2s coming into this game. All right, he struck out 8 Dodgers, and he had 20 whiffs. So he managed to get a ton of swing and miss, 16 of which came against his four-seam fastball. The Dodgers don't tend to struggle against four-seamers, 6th in team OPS against four-seam fastballs in Major League Baseball. But Schlittler, his four-seam fastball is different. Second best swing and miss four-seamer among all starting pitchers behind Jacob Misiorowski. So he gets a lot of swing and miss on that four-seamer, and he was getting a lot in this game alone. But obviously, the Dodgers were able to get him out before the conclusion of the 5th inning. And what's funny is that Schlittler doesn't walk guys, and he had no walks in this game. So if I told you before the game, Schlittler's going to strike out 8, he's not going to allow any walks, and he's going to get 20 swings and misses, I would have said, not looking too great for the Dodgers. But they get him out of the game before the conclusion of the 5th inning. How did they do that? Well, they actually had a lot of long at-bats and a lot of foul balls, which led to, obviously, the pitch count getting up there. Not a bad game plan. I mean, when you go up against guys like that, you kind of have to understand, like, we're not going to string together 10 hits and 8 earned runs off of Schlittler. I don't think. So you kind of have to have a game plan and try to execute and try to, you scrape across 3 earned runs against him. That's a pretty good game plan, and it worked. Like I said, they struck out 13 times in the game, but they went 5 for 12 with runners in scoring position, which isn't bad, and pretty good offensive game. Kept the line moving in that those later innings to put up some pretty crooked numbers. Ohtani 2-hit game, Tommy Edman 2-hit game, Max Muncy 2-hit game. And I wanted to talk about Tommy Edman really quick. In his 24 games since being activated from the IL, he did pinch hit in this game Sunday night, and he did hit a home run. So actually 25 games. He's hitting .355 with a .430 on base, a .526 slug, and a .956 OPS. He's been absolutely raking since coming off the IL, hitting both from the left and the right side. The slugging percentage being that high, it won't stay up there all year because he's not a guy who slugs, but it just shows how hot he is right now. I'll talk about his home run in Game 3, pinch hit home run, the 2 hits. He's been really, really great, especially for the bottom of the order for the Dodgers, which hasn't been an issue for them all year. They've had one of the better bottom of the orders in baseball, but still, you plug him into the 8th or the 9th hole, and he's been amazing offensively. Much less at-bats for Kyle Freeland because of what Tommy Edman's been doing. So let's go to Game 3 of this series. It's a bullpen game. Will Klein gets the start. Bullpen game for the Yankees. Ryan Yarbrough, former Dodger, shout out to him. He gets the start for the Yankees. All right, bottom of the first. The Yankees get on the board, 1-0 Yankees, thanks to an RBI single from former Dodger Cody Bellinger. 1-0 Yankees. They get that run off of Will Klein. We have to skip ahead all the way to the top of the 8th inning. Dodgers have no offense going against the Yankee bullpen. Tommy Edman comes off the bench to pinch hit against who is pitching? Fernando Cruz. Gets a splitter up in the zone. Hits a home run out to right field to tie the game. A pinch hit home run for Tommy Edman. And for those who don't know, I put this out on my X. Fernando Cruz's splitter, the second best swing and miss pitch in the entire sport, behind Mason Miller's slider. So that pitch generates as many swing and miss as any pitch in the game, and Tommy Edman took it out to right field for a home run to tie the game off the bench. Skip ahead to the bottom of the 8th, another home run. This time it's for Jazz Chisholm off of Evan Phillips out to left field. And that would be all she wrote. The Dodgers were not able to come back in the 9th inning off of David Bednar. The Yankees salvage the series. They get out of there with a win. The Dodgers win the series. They improved to 63-37, best record in baseball. Not able to sweep the Yankees on Sunday night, but they do get out of there with a series win, which you will take over a pretty good Yankees team. A lot of guys pitched in this bullpen game, all right? Will Klein got the start. He goes 1 inning. We got Kyle Hurt for 2, Edgardo Henriquez for 2/3, Jack Dreyer for 1/3, Brock Stewart for 2 innings. He looked very sharp. Vesia for 1. He looked really, really dominant. And then Evan Phillips has continued to struggle a bit since coming off the IL. He goes 1 inning. The Yankees as well, bullpen game. Ryan Yarbrough for 2 2/3, Paul Blackburn for 2 1/3, Brent Hedrick for 2 innings pitch. Fernando Cruz just 1/3 after the home run to Tommy Edman. And then David Bednar, 1 2/3 innings pitch to get the save. Yankees get that win. Let's talk about the bullpen and everything that happened in this game. It's kind of funny because the middle of all those pitchers, the middle was great, but the beginning and the end were not. Will Klein gave up the earned run in the first to get the Yankees on the board, and then Phillips gave up the home run in the 8th as the last pitcher out of the pen for the loss. I did want to talk about Brock Stewart. He looked absolutely electric. Actually pitched out of a bases loaded, no out jam. Got a strikeout on a nasty cutter, got a pop-up, and then got another strikeout of Anthony Volpe. Looked absolutely electric. The stuff was really good. Alex Vesia, he struck out the side against the meat of the Yankees lineup, threw a couple changeups that were filthy. The velocity's actually been up for Vesia, which is really interesting. I made a post about him last night on my X. Got a ton of traction. Velocity was up 2 miles an hour. He's been mostly around 91.8, basically right under 92. He was up 2 miles an hour, almost 94 in this game, so that's great. The velocity was up from Alex Vesia, but obviously Evan Phillips, he has struggled in his first 4 innings pitched since coming back from Tommy John. The stuff has looked fantastic He just has left too many pitches over the heart of the plate. Has given up some home runs. Probably would be best suited for Evan to pitch some low leverage to get accustomed and get ready to come back. Kind of has been thrown right into the fire as a high leverage guy. Obviously, today was more because the bullpen game, so it was kind of like he was one of the last guys left. I think he's going to be fine. The velocity's been great. He's been touching 98. The sweeper was looking really, really electric. He just, in the past, one thing he did struggle with before Tommy John was left-handed hitters, and obviously Jazz Chisholm got him with that home run. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, but the stuff has looked really good. It's only 4 innings. Can't really blame a guy for coming back from Tommy John and not looking great. Especially with the stuff has been great. That's why it is promising. He's throwing very hard. Stuff looks explosive, so I think he'll be fine. Probably got to find him some easier spots in the lineup to come in before we're really ready to get Evan Phillips back in high leverage. But I think we'll look back at this and say, after this game, Phillips really took off since coming back from Tommy John. So, bullpen game, it's a lot to ask for every guy to go out there and pitch perfect. A lot of guys pitched really good, pitched out of some jams, made some big pitches. Just ultimately, was going to be difficult to come into New York and sweep the Yankees. The Dodgers have actually now 3 years in a row, I believe, won the 2 opening games against the Yankees and then lost the following the Sunday game. Did that last year in LA, crushed the Dodgers the first 2 games, actually come back in the Game 1 series and then crushed them the next game, and then we're not able to get the sweep Sunday. And then the following year, I was actually in New York for this. They won the opening series. Yamamoto dominated opening game series. I was in New York for the second game. Teoscar Hernandez hit a couple home runs, grand slam. And then Sunday night, weren't able to get the sweep. So same kind of story for the Dodgers the last couple of years against the Yankees, which has turned into a nice little rivalry. Obviously, their rivalry kind of goes back. There are a lot of historical reasonings. The most common World Series matchup in baseball history is the Dodgers and the Yankees. And then obviously the Dodgers used to play in Brooklyn. They were a part of the 3-headed monster New York teams of the New York Giants, Yankees, and then the Brooklyn Dodgers. So a lot of history between them. And then obviously they're just the 2 biggest teams in baseball in terms of, payroll and big markets and big players and all that stuff. The 2 biggest players in the game, Judge and Ohtani, play on both of those teams. So, it's kind of turned into an interesting, fun rivalry and something to look forward to, and a lot of stars. It's unfortunate that Judge was injured and we weren't able to see him, but regardless, the Yankees are a good team. They'll be in the postseason. Dodgers get out of there with a series win, and we know that coming up, the Dodgers are going to play a lot of good teams. Phillies, Mariners, Red Sox, Yankees just got checked off the board. The Cubs, or I should say the Yankees got checked off the board. But before we get to some of that stuff, the offense, okay? This game wasn't really on the bullpen, even though obviously Klein didn't pitch that great, and then Evan Phillips gave up the homer. The offense had chances late in the game to get some runs on the board to tie or win the game. But for a lot of that game, they didn't really do much early on. A lot of just quick 1, 2, 3 innings, especially like 4th, 5th, 6th inning. They only had 4 hits and 4 walks for the entirety of that game. 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position, 5 runners left on base. 2 double plays in this game that really killed them early on between Teoscar Hernandez and Kyle Tucker. That killed potential rallies, innings. Got to see the offense look a little bit better in Philly. It's funny because obviously in the middle of this series they put up 8 runs against the Yankees and looked pretty good. But there were a lot of guys that did struggle in this opening series. Freddie Freeman didn't really look great this weekend. Mookie has officially gone back to slumping since 2 weeks ago when he was really red hot. He's been really cold since then. Tucker did have a couple hits, but he also had some really big at-bats that didn't really do much. Outside of really a couple Pages hits, a couple Shohei hits, and the Muncy home run, and obviously Tommy Edman as well, not a lot of great at-bats. Teoscar Hernandez, all right? So, like I said, Freddie Freeman didn't look great this weekend. Would like to see him turn that around in Philly, but he's been great, obviously, all season. Mookie, like I said, officially has gone back to being cold. He is 3 for his last 23. His OPS is now down to 689. I hate that. He's the guy that him and Tucker have all season wanted to see them turn it around. He was starting to get that OPS up to 750, was really close to getting his numbers in a good spot. Well, now they're down back to 689, and it's going to take some more time for him to get his numbers in a better spot. All right. Teoscar Hernandez, he is hitting 118 in his last 15 games. Since coming off the IL, he has mightily struggled. All right, and then I need to see some guys with some better at-bats in Philadelphia, which is going to be a tough ask because they are facing Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler. All right, it's going to be a tough ask. But Kyle Tucker, Teoscar Hernandez, Mookie Betts, I got to see some better at-bats in Philly. All right, lock in. You're facing some good pitching. You got to be on your best for those Philly pitchers. So they will head to Philadelphia for the next 3, and then they'll actually head back to New York over the weekend to take on the Mets. Christopher Sanchez versus Emmett Sheehan Monday night. That's a pretty good pitching matchup. Zach Wheeler Tuesday night, which will be against, I think, Eric Lauer. It's to be determined right now, but I would imagine it's Eric Lauer. And then Wednesday probably is a bullpen game with the off day the next day. That'll be against Aaron Nola. I don't think they want to move up Sasaki to pitch on Wednesday. I think that'll be a bullpen game. They could call somebody up from the minor leagues, Cole Irving, somebody that they acquired that could pitch that game, something like that. But I would imagine probably a bullpen game. So we'll see. Offense has got to wake up, though, and look a little bit better. Obviously, first series out of the second half, so not going to overreact. They did get the series win, but I'd like to see the offense and some guys put together some much better at-bats in Philadelphia. But that's all my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed. Overall, a great way to start out the second half, especially after that stinker sweep against the Diamondbacks. Dodgers have the best record of baseball, and they take care of the Yankees. As always, you can get this podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talkin' Blue Pod. And you can follow myself at Nick Talkin' Ball on X. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you later this week to recap the Dodgers and the Phillies. Have a great night, everybody.